We all just...
Well, Anthony, if you want, you can still log in as...
He is.
No, he's logged in as himself.
Oh, he is. Okay, I see.
That's
came back in.
But if you log out and log in through the YouTube event page, you should be able to have control.
Okay, we don't need to do that now, but should the worst happen,
I'll go ahead and do that now, just in case.
Okay. Now we have 1 minute. Will he return?
Dun, dun, dun.
We should make that a paper level. Is that still going?
What?
Will it
blend?
I never even
have to imagine so.
I just use that as a reference.
I have to imagine it's still going. I mean, over time you build up an audience for something, and there's no obvious sign that like blending technology, has like declined in interest. People always want to see that.
Yeah.
So Amos, sorry. I just wanted to let Amos. Do you see a big red button in front of you? Okay, cool.
Yep, I'm on it.
The most recent Will It Blend was from July of this year. So yeah.
Wow.
And that was the Amazon Echo, right?
Yeah.
Was it? I thought it wasn't like.
I mean, I think the answer is yes, it will.
In fact, everything blends.
It's not so much that it's a question. It's more of like, what does it look like afterwards?
Yeah. How does it blend?
Right.
Yeah. Let's dig deeper. Does it blend well? What does it blend well with?
Does it explode when it blends?
All right. You guys ready?
Yeah.
I'm down.
And here we go. Thanks to everyone who supports Daily Tech News Show directly. To find out more, head to dailytechnewsshow.com/support. This is the Daily Tech News Show for Monday, August 27th in Los Angeles. I'm Tom Merritt.
And from Studio Feline, I'm Sarah Lane.
And welcome to our Roundtable Show, the show we do once a month where we expand the regular show into a full-fledged roundtable discussion, a full hour of meaty discussion between myself, Sarah Lane, and our guest joining us today, Jason Howell, host of Tech News Weekly and all about Android, and of course, musician at yellowgoldmusic.com and so much more. Jason, how's it going?
Dang it. That makes me feel way more important than I actually am.
You are very important.
When I look at my time spent on things throughout the day, I never realized that it would actually make a list of things that I actually do. But there you go. I'm happy to be here, you guys. I love joining you on DTNS. Thank you.
And we are going to talk music tech today because we also have with us Dale Chase. You can find him at dchase.bandcamp.com. He's also a software engineer. How's it going, Dale?
Great. Thanks for having me, guys. Really excited to be here. Join you guys.
Our producer, Anthony Lemos, a.k.a. Amos, is with us as well, although Roger isn't quite gone yet.
Not gone.
Amos, how do you feel? If Roger has to step out mid-show, you're ready, right?
I'm going to try to figure it out.
We believe in Amos.
All right. While all of our topics today cover news of the day in some respect, we're going to start with a few tech things you should know.
Uber CEO Dara Khosrowshahi told the Financial Times that the company plans to shift its focus from cars to bikes and scooters for inner city rides. Khosrowshahi said, quote, "It's very inefficient for a 1-ton hulk of metal to take one person 10 blocks. He acknowledged that it could reduce Uber's profits in the short term, however. Also, the Wall Street Journal says that Toyota plans to invest $500 million into Uber.
Well, what a feeling for Uber. Bloomberg, Mark Gurman, and Debbie Woo's sources say Apple's going to launch 3 phones in September. Not a big surprise there, but the details are a 6.5-inch OLED, an updated 5.8-inch OLED. That's what the iPhone 10 is right now, so an update to that. A cheaper 6.1-inch phone with an LCD screen. And analyst Ming-Chi Kuo said his sources indicate the announcement would happen the week of September 9th, with the 2 OLED models available by the end of September and the cheaper model available slightly later due to a production schedule issue.
Bloomberg's Gurman and Wu also mentioned that Google plans to announce the Google Pixel 3 and Pixel 3 XL in New York on October 9th, according to their sources. Previous sources had indicated October 4th for the Pixel announcement, so going to have to wait another 5 days, if these sources are correct.
Maybe. Microsoft posted an announcement of All Access. It actually happened. That's the one that lets customers buy an Xbox along with the Xbox Game Pass and the Xbox Live Gold subscriptions all for one low monthly price. And after you do it for 2 years, you own the console that you get through this. The post detailed that the plan with the Xbox One S, as expected, costs $22 a month, and the Xbox One X plan costs $35 a month.
Oculus Rift inventor Palmer Luckey wrote a criticism of the Magic Leap on his blog Monday, titled, "Magic Leap is a tragic heap." Luckey focuses on criticizing the controller tracking, the UI. He also said the headset is not significantly different from other AR headsets. He did praise the decision to put the computing in a separate wearable component called the Light Pack.
Friday, Google researchers published a flaw in the installer for Epic's Fortnite app for Android. Users will have to launch the installer or the game itself to get the new patch because it won't be pushed through the Play Store since it's not in the Play Store. Because of this, Epic had requested a full 90 days before public disclosure, but Google's policy is to wait 1 week after a patch is made broadly available. So they stuck to the letter of their policy.
And in other Google news, the company is now rolling out its time-watched YouTube feature, helping users keep better track of how much they've watched today, yesterday, or over the past 7 days. This is according to Google. The company first announced the feature at I/O earlier this year.
All right, Sarah, let's start with our first roundtable topic.
Yes, I'm very excited about this, particularly because we're going to start with you, Jason, because you are a musician. You compose music. You know a lot about how it all works. So what we're going to focus on at the beginning of this roundtable is a little bit of why it's rewarding and why it's challenging to be an indie musician these days.
It's it's equal parts both. I picked this topic because it's something I struggle with continually. Like I only really have a couple of albums that I've ever put out there, and I always feel like it like for myself on a personal level, it's a big accomplishment to like work for X amount of months or years, however long, for in my case a little too long, to be honest, but then to finally come out the other end and have something to show for it, like that's a big accomplishment. The reality is that anyone can do that right now because we all have technology that allows us to do this, yet there's so many other hurdles that come along with this. I feel like people sometimes in these conversations around like how democratic making music is now, how anybody can do this and become an overnight success. I think what's lost a lot of times, especially with people who aren't musicians, is this idea that along with this kind of capability, having the power and the ability to do all of these things nowadays that were very hard or very expensive to do 20 years ago, is this idea or this assumption that a musician also needs to know how to do all of that and needs to be the executor of doing all of that. So kind of my idea here was that there are a lot of things that are super rewarding about being a musician, right? And things that make it super enjoyable. We've got social media, which basically means that you're constantly connecting with fans and that you have this direct vein into connecting with the people who actually care to listen to your music and reach out and say, hey, I really like what you're doing. That feels good as a musician to get that. That was kind of hard to get 20, 30 years ago, to get that direct line. Crowdfunding, obviously, that's a huge tool that I've used in the 2 albums that I've done as Yellow Gold. Crowdfunding was kind of, I mean, I actually, honestly, Tom, kind of followed in your footsteps in that regard, because years ago you were kind of dipping your toes into Kickstarter, and I was like, well, what's the thing that I have to kickstart? And it ended up being music. So, big thanks to you for setting the example there. But having that as a tool, having that as an avenue to explore can be really effective if you have the right pool of like potential backers. We've got all sorts of digital tools that enable so much for so little cost. Online distribution, it's way easier. It's also less expensive and less complicated than, say, physical distribution. And literally anyone can make music and distribute it online and appear in the big stores. So yes, Sarah, if you open up your GarageBand and you make a song, you make an album or whatever, you can use a service like DistroKid, and they're going to do all of the distribution for you and put your music in all of these stores. So it's almost like you're surfacing in the places that all of the pros are. The people that have been doing the career musicians are there right alongside you, and that's very empowering. So those are some really good avenues for being an independent musician.
Although, doesn't the market being so crowded with people who are experimenting. Maybe I can do this, maybe I can. And maybe they, there's you either lose interest or you don't get enough attention or whatever. I know on the video side, this is very much true. How do you deal with that reality that so many people have these cheap tools?
Right. That's a huge challenge.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a gigantic challenge, right? It's like on one hand, things have been democratized to the point that anybody can do that. And so empowering that we have the ability to replicate what used to have been, many hundreds of thousands of dollars in a studio. We have that now on a computer that we pick off the shelf when we go into a store. And so that means that everybody can get in there, they can make the music, and that's super empowering. But you're right. The challenge then ends up being, wow, there's a lot of noise in here. You know what I mean? Standing out, really reaching that critical mass can be super challenging. You have, as a musician, you have to then have sharpened your tools in the other areas. You have to be a jack of all trades. And that ends up, for me, on a personal level, that ends up being my downfall, right? Like, I love making music. I love being a musician. I love recording technology and getting in the studio and playing around with things and layering vocals and even choosing art, like, picking art or creating art for the packaging. Even putting together the Kickstarter is a lot of fun. It's the longevity of it and making sure that you maintain that constant kind of presence in front of people beyond, because as you know, attention fades super quickly right now in so many things, not just music online. But if you're not keeping super vigilant and keeping connected with those fans in some way, then you're going to lose their attention, and it's going to become way more difficult to both stand out and continue to be in front of them as you go forward. And that's a huge fault of mine. I have a really hard time with that.
Well, I know Dale's going to talk. We're going to talk with Dale in our next topic a little bit about social media and reaching out and engaging with the fans out in the world. But Dale, how do you feel about this other half of what Jason's talking about?
Yeah,
you have to do all the work yourself.
Yeah, I did want to jump off of that point exactly. So it's like it's great that we have all this technology now and the internet and social media, but like all these things are what like your record label used to do for you, right?
Yep.
And so now, we've kind of gotten the shackles off of the label, but now you're taking on all those responsibilities now. So it's like you've got all this freedom now to do what you want, but yeah, you've got to do it all now.
Mm-hmm.
The freedom to do what you want means the freedom to do it all.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think a lot of, record labels get a bad rap. They take too much artist money and, it's sort of an old way of doing things. But I think there is something to say about, okay, we're going to take care of you. You just be creative.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Yeah.
We've got a team and we'll figure it out. When you have to do it all yourself, a lot of that stuff ends up being, it's kind of busy work. It's not that fun.
Comes down to how much you really value that freedom, or how much you want to like have someone else take care of that, take that on for you,
Yeah. And no matter what, there's always going to be the people out there that as creatives, as digital creatives, they love every single step of the process, and they've got the time, they've got the bandwidth and the ambition to really kind of drive all these things. You see some of these people that kind of rise up through the ranks of, being like a YouTube musician or a SoundCloud musician or whatever. And they've started with nothing. They started in the bedroom with a piece of technology, a computer, and maybe a couple of musical instruments, but they've somehow got the long-term vision, and I think mostly that drive to stay connected in all of these pieces, to make the connections they need to put one foot in front of the other, and ultimately build this to become a grander thing than somebody who's just a really great musician but has a hard time managing all of those other things. Like, do I as a person have the time every single day to go on my social media platforms of choice and broadcast out, hey, I'm working on this, or teasing out a picture of the guitar that I'm using to write the song that I'm working on, or
even just
whatever.
Designing a cover and designing materials and doing all the things that maybe you're not an expert in, because you can't be an expert in everything.
No, but I think the tools are so democratizing right now that there are a lot of people who feel they can be an expert in everything, and more power to them. A lot of people are proving that they just have a great digitally creative mind, and that they can go, well, what I need now is I need a piece of art. I'm going to go out, with my digital camera, shoot a bunch of things, take it into Photoshop, and they think through starting to end, and they can actually turn that into something really pleasing in the end that does something for them. And I'm amazed when people can pull that off.
Dale, how do you feel about that yourself? Because I bet there's some musicians out there who think, oh, yeah, that's great if you can do it, but I don't want to. It sounds like work.
No, I mean, I fall in the camp of like I want to do it all myself, and I'm inspired to. I've got so many ideas and so many things I want to get done, but it's like I've got a song that I just finished, really excited about it, love it. I need to do a music video for it, right?
Oh.
That's where I'm like, I need to get with somebody and to come up with
Yeah.
an idea, probably put down some loot for it,
That gets overwhelming for me. Like the idea of a music video. This is actually a realization that I've had with this album that I released earlier this year. And that's that you can only do. Okay, let me take a step back. The first album that I released on Kickstarter ever won was what, 4 years ago. And I think what blows me away between 4 years ago and now is just how much things have evolved and changed in a single 4 years time, right? Like 4 years ago, video wasn't as necessary. Sure, if you had a music video on YouTube to accompany the music on your album, that was nice. Now it almost feels essential because Google is doing taking Google as the specific example. Google's doing all these changes with Google Play Music. Suddenly it's turning into YouTube Music, and there's way more of an emphasis on video now. Not to mention YouTube as just like a behemoth, as a juggernaut. So many people are on YouTube because that's how you grow your air quotes brand. That's how you build up this following. YouTube's a great platform for that. So then you're expected as a musician to have some sort of a music video. I've never done a music video. I mean, aside from, I think NSFW on the last album, they did a crowdsourced music video, and yeah, that was pretty cool. But I mean, I don't even know where to begin on that. So then it becomes super overwhelming. I'm like, you know what? Peace out. I got my album. I'm cool with that. Move on to the next thing. Yeah,
well, and there's also the element of if if it's a song, you love the song, you're proud of it.
Sure.
It's a whole other creative thing. Like, how do I make this viral video-wise, which is not really probably what you ever thought about when you thought of this great song.
Yeah, absolutely. Having to think about your music as like a marketing machine, or think of those elements behind it kind of can also cheapen it a little bit, right? Because I think as a lot of times artists want to think of the art that they do as something that's pure, and I do it because I love it and I enjoy it. But when it gets down to it, yes, you can do that. But if you really want to make a business from it, you also have to monetize it, and you have to put some sort of a marketing mind behind it to take it to that next level. And sometimes that can feel kind of like you're selling your soul, I think, if you care so much about what you're doing, So it's a challenge.
It's hard to promote yourself. I've always found that.
Yeah.
Totally.
Even if you believe in the work, it's a whole other thing. It's a whole
We
other
haven't even
job.
talked about the accounting side of it, right? Like on the one hand, if you're creative, you may be like interested in creating an album cover. You may be interested in creating a video and could find a friend who can help you put a video together. You probably don't want to deal with taxes, making sure you got paid, and which is the best distribution channel to maximize your return and all of that. I mean, where does that fit in for you guys?
That's a hard one too, right? Like I know broad strokes ideas on taxes, which is, in general, set aside 30%, unless you plan on spending everything.
Pay them.
Yeah, file them and pay them. Or, and obviously I am not a tax accountant, so don't follow my stupid advice here. Or you take the money that you make from this endeavor and make sure that it goes back in to fund the business, right? And anything that's spent there is not considered against your taxes, and you could essentially spend it all on music-related purchases that tie into your business, and you won't be liable from them from a tax standpoint. But I mean, keeping track of that, like I mentioned a service a little bit earlier called DistroKid, which is an online music distribution. It's made by the same guy that did that Eft Company website. Phil, yes, exactly.
Phil Pepin.
And I mean, there are other services just like this, but what they allow you to do is they allow you to say, these are all the music services that my music will appear on. In the case of DistroKid, it's like a single yearly cost that's really not that much considering what you get out of it. And then all of that money, all your album success on all of these networks is tracked. And then there's like basically a bank through DistroKid. So they kind of manage that. But that leads into another kind of struggle that I have, and I think a lot of musicians do, which is this idea that now convenience and streaming is so important as compared to the physical sales. People just aren't buying anymore, whether it's physical copies, like an actual CD. What is a CD anymore? Versus just going onto Spotify and saying, yeah, I'll add that artist and I'll listen to their music. Like the amount of money from an artist standpoint that you earn from straight up digital streaming versus actually someone buying your product, buying your album and keeping it. I mean, it's just miles apart. That's another huge difference between 4 years ago and now. 4 years ago with Everone, there were still a decent amount of people who missed out on the Kickstarter and bought the album digitally, actually bought it, didn't just stream it. And this time around, I think more people are just adding it on their library and streaming it. And that's awesome. I want people to do exactly what they want, but it's a consideration as a musician. If you want to make money and make a career out of this now, that's a really big hurdle. I don't know how you overcome it. It's just it's what I accept.
Way of thinking about it, right? With a CD, you see a big margin of money from each unit. So it feels like you're making money. With streaming, you see an infinitesimal amount of money from each unit. So it feels like you're not making money. But there is more money going into streaming from users than was being spent on CDs.
Yeah.
So that money's going somewhere. It's a matter of figuring out, how do you extract that money as a musician? How do you get your plays up? How do you strike better deals? Whatever. Dale, how do you feel about streaming versus product like that?
Yeah, I kind of look at it the same way as Jason. I'm seeing revenue from streaming, but yeah, I don't see a lot because I don't have a huge volume when it comes to that. But yeah, I see that is where everything is going, and it really is about just kind of getting that exposure and having more people listening to it, and that's how you gain more fans, is through the streaming. That's how you get discovered, essentially, more and more. So I'm looking. That's why I look at more other venues to kind of promote, like YouTube and things like that, to kind of get my name out there more, so people are seeking you out more in other places like streaming services.
All right. Well, that brings us right into Dale's topic. Let's move on to topic 2: how you leverage social media to break into the music scene, engage with your fan base, secure gigs and venues, etc. Like, all right, we've talked a lot about making the music, but how do you get people to listen to it?
Well, so this is why I got stuck on YouTube a little bit, because that was sort of my first success. So I had written Coda Girl and done a video for it, in Queens, New York, and tweeted to, at the time, Gina Trapani was the editor at Lifehacker at the time, and was doing Grease Monkey scripts, for Gmail. And I was watching Hack 5 and seeing Shannon Morse doing We Hacks, and between the two of them, I was inspired to write the song. So after I'd done the video, and I was like, oh, I've got something here, And so I tweeted at both of them on a Tuesday afternoon, where I figured everyone was in front of their computers. And Gina saw it, retweeted it, and at the time she had something like 65,000 followers, and I think Shannon was somewhere around 20 or 25, maybe 20, 25,000. And but anyway, they retweeted it, and it sort of started to catch and sort of go semi-viral, and so that's why I'm sort of chasing the dragon, as far as, so I'm trying to like recapture that, like with every release at this point.
Recapture that high.
But also through that, so I had made friends with Shannon through that, and it was something that was relevant to her interest, and we connected. They started using my music on Hack 5, and I got more fans from that. Started going to conferences and selling my CDs there, with them at DEF CON, that sort of thing. So yeah, kind of my thing is, find forums that are related to what you're doing in some respect. I guess with me, it's a little easier because my stuff is so like geek centric. So like when I do my Doctor Who songs, I go to a Doctor Who forum and post in there, hey, check out my party anthem, set in the world of Doctor Who, or go to some other, some coder forum and say, hey, check out my song that uses all like Linux references. It's like so it's that kind of thing. I kind of find where everyone is that is that niche that you're looking for, and then put it in front of them.
So Dale, what are some of your, where's the Doctor Who forum? What platform are you, where do you find you get the most interest from?
Yeah,
I know that audience.
Yeah, I'm just looking around. I think it was a Doctor Who Facebook page or something, like a fan page that I was posting things in. This was like a little while ago. Yeah, just be creative and like search and look for things that are getting a lot of traction. That forums that are getting a lot of traction.
I know that I don't want to speak for them, but musicians like Jonathan Colton made their name with kind of novelty like songs, Code Monkey and stuff like that, and then created more serious, less novelty songs that maybe didn't capture as much attention. And like I said, I don't want to speak for Jonathan, but I know if I were a musician, I wouldn't want to get pigeonholed into like, oh, now I always have to have a funny song, full of references if I want it to get any attention. Do you two musicians deal with that as well? Like getting pigeonholed, basically?
That's something that I have been cognizant of, especially more recently. Like with all the political things that have been going on, I actually wrote like something that was super political like a few months ago, and I didn't really promote it, and I just kind of put it out just because I was like, this is something I need to get off my chest. But I working on the new project now. I was like, well, I do those songs because that is who I am ultimately, right? So it's not really like I'm pigeonholing myself.
Yeah.
But I do want to branch out and do more things. So I feel like I just do a mix of like things that kind of run the gamut for me. But it is something I do think about.
Yeah, thinking about pigeonholing, I feel like pigeonholing would imply, at least in my mind, with the music that I make, that there are enough people that are paying attention and that have opinions about something, that they have an expectation about what you're doing and are willing to express that, or maybe you recognize that might be the case. My whole drive with Yellow Gold, I started Yellow Gold probably like 25, 26 years ago, when I was in high school. My whole drive the entire way along was never, this is the type of music that I write is Yellow Gold, but rather I'm just writing music that I enjoy at this moment in time, and it's called the Yellow Gold. It all falls in the Yellow Gold bucket. So Everyone sounds way different, than Fever Dreamer, which is the album from this year. So I hope to not ever pigeonhole myself, because then I feel like I'm writing to a particular thing as opposed to just kind of writing music because I enjoy it. So thankfully, I don't have the pressure of having massive amounts of fans that have expectations on the music that I write, right?
Right.
Like I can write whatever I want. It doesn't matter.
But I mean, there are, artists on all sorts of levels of, celebrity and audience numbers. If Beyonce puts out an album that's totally a departure from anything that anybody ever heard from her before, everyone's going to be like, what?
It's a risk.
What's happening? Right. Yeah. When you get to a certain point, then, maybe you're, that's considered like creative genius. But when you're starting out and someone likes what you're doing and you decide to change course, because again, you're a creative person who just wants to make the music you want to make, it can be, I would think, for somebody who's building an audience rather than the audience already having been there, that makes the social media aspect of this even more important, because you have to communicate what is this? What's going on in your life? What's happening? Why does it sound different?
Yeah, Dale, what you were saying as far as like writing for like a tech, a tech geek culture, a tech influence songs, that sort of thing. I think it's brilliant for building an audience, and it ties right into kind of the power and the effectiveness of using and leveraging social media to build your audience, because it is possible to find those people, right? Like if you're making just, if you're making music that's rock music and you're like, what, my music's going to appeal to a fan of Radiohead. All right. How many people out there are making music that they think will appeal to fans of Radiohead and this rock music? It's such a wide pool that, again, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, just the struggle of being, in this pool of music surrounded by so many other people, so much noise, you never stand out. At least if you're able to pick, and this is probably why it worked really well for Jonathan Coulton, you're able to pick out of your own passion, hopefully, a particular niche that you can write to, that, let's hope, hasn't really experienced that in such a way before. They haven't really had their anthem. If you can write to that, and you write something that's really going to catch their attention because they don't have much music written for them, that's a fantastic way to stand out, but hopefully somewhere along the line, tying back with what you were saying, Tom, you can do this in a way that doesn't like narrow you into only writing those anthems. You can broaden.
So the next Yellow Gold album will not be called Sideloading Fortnite.
No, that if I wanted to catch that wave, that was like a month ago or a couple of weeks ago. Too late on that one. Maybe it's going to be artificial intelligence robots, or I don't know. Yes, but I think you're onto something.
Well, I think if you're a front man, right? If you're a vocalist who loves to be on stage and perform, or even a guitarist, a bassist, whatever, then the social media game is natural. You want to play to the audience. You want to communicate with the audience. You might even want to be combative with the audience, depending on your style. Well, what if you're the drummer though? Like, or what if you're the guy who's, you know, just who turns around away from the audience and that's wants to make the music, but has a hard time reaching out and being public when that's, you know, this ties us back to what we were talking about in our first topic. You know, it's hard to promote yourself.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard when your purpose is to write music and your purpose is not to do all those other things. You enjoy being part of the process, but you don't necessarily enjoy directing the process. I'm sure there's a lot of people that fall into that
let's
category.
say you even love the accounting part of it. You're fine with everything. You just don't want to talk to people.
Well, I mean, to a certain degree, you kind of got to get over that part, I guess. Like,
well, that's probably why we all know like a few drummers who are really good, and you're like, why aren't you in a band? And they're like, I don't know.
Yeah, right.
I don't mean to stereotype drummers. I was a drummer in high school, so I feel like I was speaking on behalf of myself. Not all drummers. Hashtag right there.
Or maybe we have like enough kind of avenues now, though. I mean, maybe they're really good at taking pictures. This drummer, like maybe they can just get on Instagram and take pictures of their drums. You know.
Yeah. Right.
Right. No, that's a really good point. Like, what are the various outlets? You know, it's not just Twitter and Facebook anymore. What are the effective places to promote your music?
Actually, Instagram has become very popular for promoting music. I think people are kind of sliding away from SoundCloud a little bit more, even though it's super popular. But like I'm not really on Instagram, but it looks like people are going there for promotion a lot now.
Instagram just feels like a really big destination. It has been for a while for a number of reasons, and I think you're probably exactly right. And that's such a hurdle for me. I am not my habit is not Instagram. You know what I mean? Like, I think if of social media habits that I have, the only one that I have anymore is probably Twitter. And Twitter is actually in many ways a very ineffective promotional platform, right? Because it's such a drop in the bucket. You put out an announcement, you say, hey, I've got a blog post that's on the music production process of this album or whatever. And unless someone happens to be there at that very moment to spot it, to click through, and then a handful of replies, whatever, like it's just going to fade away. So some of these other networks, Instagram, I think, is better at that. Instagram is so visual that it's easy to catch someone's attention, just pure, instead of just being a wall of text. But it's so far outside of my own personal habit that it feels like such a mountain to climb to get into the Instagram habit,
I mean, obviously Instagram has a huge user base, but Dale, why do you think that people would be turning away from SoundCloud? I can think of a few artists that I know from SoundCloud that got, they were very successful, hip hop artists, especially from starting on SoundCloud. I mean, is it just maybe going where the people are going, or
maybe just personal preference? I mean, it just seems like, with these sites, these services in general, and like they have like their high moments, and people kind of like slide to something new, whatever the new thing is.
So if Instagram, if I could speak in 90s terms, if Instagram is the flyer and SoundCloud's the cassette tape, then like Bandcamp is the stepping up to CDs from SoundCloud.
Well, I mean, I see Bandcamp more of a way for me to kind of sell my music or kind of make it available for people.
That's the merch table. Then.
Yeah,
exactly.
The
merch table, totally. Yeah,
that's exactly what it is.
Yeah. I love that because like people can pay. I let people pay what they want on there. So a lot of people pick it up for free, and some people will pick up like my whole catalog for like $50. It's like I like giving people that freedom.
Do you think, Dale? Just a curious question. Do you think that being a musician now, being an independent musician at this point in time, means you have to be okay with the fact, you have to accept the fact that your music is only as valuable as someone ever feels like it is? You know what I mean? Like in the old guard, your music was as valuable as whatever you charged for it. People paid it or they didn't. Now it feels like, and I'm totally happy to do this. I've always operated under this assumption that like my music is free, but if you want to give me some money, great, go for it. Do you think that's more important now than ever?
Well, I look at it more as like I still feel like I haven't like arrived yet, right? So sure. I still feel like I want as many people to experience it as possible.
Right.
That's kind of become a rule of thumb, which is give away your music until you're so big that you can afford to not give away your music.
Very well put.
At what point do you feel like it is worth it to sign a contract with a label, knowing you're getting the benefits of helping out with all of the business side of things and distribution side of things, but giving up a little bit of freedom?
That's actually something I haven't really given a lot of thought to. I would think that if I had, achieved what I thought was a certain level of success, and they came to me with something where I was like, yeah, this looks really good to me, then I'd think about it a little bit harder that I was actually signing with a label.
Sorry. Go.
No, sorry. But plus, I had gone through like that kind of stuff when I was younger, and had developed a bad taste in my mouth a little bit, and it was just like, I just landed with the wrong people, at that time, and I wasn't like mature enough to kind of like work my way through it, and had to just kind of just like, what, I'm gonna just like do my thing on my own for a while.
Makes you wary, right?
Yeah, and I kind of just stuck with it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I like you, Dale. I don't know what point that level would be that I would have to cross where I'm like, what, I'm willing to do this. I do know that if it's not apparent by now, there are certain things that I know I'm not very good at. And if someone was to come along and say, hey, you know what, we'll take that off your shoulders, we take a cut, but we'll go ahead and do that, and they would have to be able to actually prove that they could do that successfully. I wouldn't just, it wouldn't just be snake oil, and that, hopefully.
Hi, I'm Bob from Snake Oil Records.
I'm totally gonna make your music explode on the scene. Yeah, I don't know. I would have to feel comfortable with it, but I feel like there's absolute value for some people out there, that for someone else to take a cut because they're good at that aspect and you are not. But then again, there are also people out there that do not mind doing the whole thing. They got it nailed, and they're gonna reap maximum rewards as a result of that.
I look at book publishing as similar to this, and even the most successful independent artists there, like Hugh Howey or someone, eventually take a publishing deal. Now, I think publishing is a little more artist friendly sometimes than music, but there comes a point where everybody can see that benefit if they get big enough, like you said.
Yep.
All right, let's move on to the next one, Sarah.
Oh, this is going to be my favorite part because I want to know what Dale and Jason use for gear these days. Gear is cheaper. There's a lot more of it, a lot more accessible. So who wants to go first? Jason, let's start with you.
Okay, I can go first. Sure. My gear setup hasn't really changed a whole lot in that however many years, because so much of it has been, as they say, in the box. In my Mac Pro, I think my Mac Pro is like 2009. I mean, it's an old machine at this point. 2008, 2009. I've decked it out. Maxed out the memory.
Worked at CNET when you bought your Mac Pro.
Yes, actually, I posted a blog post when I received that Mac Pro. And you know what? It's still going strong. I think probably whenever I start actively working on the next album, I'll probably have to upgrade, because it's getting a little long in the tooth at this point. But it was good enough to get me through Fever Dreamer, and I'm happy about that. I think the thing that's changed over the last couple of years, there's a piece of hardware that if you follow me on Twitter, you're probably sick of hearing me talk about, but it's called the Spire Studio, that I absolutely love. It's this little like 8-track in a box, digital 8-track in a box. It's by the folks at Isotope, and it's just a tiny compact thing with a battery that you can basically power on and do overdubs. It's basically, I use it for prototyping songs. So if I have an idea in my head and I'm like, oh, I wonder what this actually sounds like, I'll sit down, pull out my guitar, throw that on, do a layer, then just start layering. And in 15 minutes, I've taken what I had in here in my head, and I've got something that I can actually listen to and go, that's an idea that I want to spend more time on later. So that's been like a godsend. I absolutely love that thing. Some people think that it's expensive. I think it's like $300, but it is amazing if you use it the way it's intended. And the only other thing that's really changed in my setup, I'm using ProTools to produce music, is there's a company called Universal Audio, and they have hardware DSP that you can plug into your computer, and then they have a whole lineup of plugins that are basically their own modeled versions of classic studio hardware. So all of these compressors and everything that would cost you thousands of dollars to get, And there are tons of plugin makers that are actually doing this. I just find that the UAD ones are super, like they're really well done. And because they rely on the DSP and the breakout hardware that you plug into your Mac, it doesn't steal any of the resources from your computer. So it kind of frees your computer up, especially when your computer is as old as mine, for other things. And I just get really great sound out of them. I've gotten really accustomed to using them. I love it. I keep things pretty simple. Outside of that, it's just my instruments, a couple of guitars, a couple of basses, and my voice.
And what kind of microphone do you use for that? For music?
Well, actually, the microphone I use happens to be the microphone that not this same one, but the brand, the Heil PR40.
You use a PR40 for music too. See, I know a lot of people who love the PR40 for voice, but then when it comes to recording song, maybe they like a different kind of mic.
I'm not saying that it's the best microphone in the world for things like recording guitar, like acoustic guitar or whatever. I definitely use it on my voice. I do use it to record guitar. A lot of the stuff though that I do is in the box. It's, an electric guitar plugged into, some sort of a preamp that goes directly into the computer. And I do guitar amp modeling inside the computer a lot of times. So using the mic to do analog recordings of things, it's maybe not as much used for that, but I use it on tambourine shakers. I use it on anything that I need to that's physical, that's an analog audio source. And I don't know, I've used it for a long time, so I guess I'm just used to using it for those things, and I can get good sound out of it.
Dale, what about you?
I'm using a Mac Mini that I think is from 2012.
Nice.
That's what the show's being streamed off of, actually. Awesome. Yeah. Same era.
But similar to Jason, I am using ProTools and in conjunction with Reason. I'm using Reason essentially for all my instruments. I use it as my sampler. I kind of model that out off of like the hardware samplers I used to use. I kind of have like modeled inside of Reason in some of their instruments. I'm using a TLM 103 for my microphone. It's a really big voiceover microphone for like TV. I had been using it, at a previous job when I was actually recording voiceovers, and just fell in love with it. It just sounded great on me. I was like, all right, this is my microphone for recording.
Well, Jason, I imagine that's why you got to use the PR40, because you were using it for podcasting, right? So
that's exactly it. I used
you had with you,
the microphone that I had.
Yeah.
This is the Neumann TLM 103. That looks like a pretty sweet mic, I have to say.
Yeah, I love it. And I use Pro Tools essentially as a sequencer along with Reason, and then once I've got like my beats kind of like the way I like them, then I'll track them back into Reason and just do all my editing and recording in Pro Tools. Sorry, not back into Pro Tools rather.
Yeah, Reason's a powerhouse. I use that for quite a long time. I don't know why I fell out of the habit of that, but Reason's amazing. Like there's so many tools within that software. I love it.
Yeah.
What about headphones?
What about headphones? I think the headphones that I'm using right now, Hi-Fi Man.
You have too, or
what's that?
You have special headphones for listening to your own music back?
I definitely have studio headphones because, okay, so I've got Mackie HRA 24s. Those are my studio monitors. Those are my in-studio loud monitors that I mix on. And I kind of mix as I go. So I don't necessarily have like, all right, here's all my rough, tracks all laid out. It's time for the mixing session or whatever. I mix as I write over the course of months or years or however long it takes me. So, and much of that is done in headphones because it's late at night, because I enjoy getting into the mood of, a nice dark room, maybe a little soft, like red light in the corner, and throwing on some really nice headphones and doing it all in headphones. So the headphones that I use are Hi-Fi Mans. They're planar, they're planar magnetic headphones. I kept suddenly blanking on the actual label of them. I can put it in the show notes afterwards. But they're like $300-400 headphones that I just really enjoy the sound of. Like if you're going to be listening through headphones to your own music and using this for hours on end, you want it to sound good. You don't want it to be uncomfortable. And I really have enjoyed those headphones, and they were primarily what I used on the last album.
Yeah, for me, monitor-wise, I'm using the Yamaha with the HSN 50s, I think they are. They're like the Yamaha NS10 sort of like knockoffs, but they're powered. And I love the way those sounds. And I think I'm using a pair of like $100 Audio Technicas, like not too dissimilar to what you're wearing, or Jason. And yeah, I guess I've been using them so long, I'm just accustomed to the way they sound, even though they're not the greatest. So they work for me in that respect.
You never feel like you're missing anything in the audio profile?
Well, I picked up a couple of headphone pairs that were supposed to be really like audiophile-y, and like I just didn't like the way they didn't. I don't know. I wasn't getting what I wanted out of them. They just didn't sound right for me. But I should try like something upwards of like a $300 or $400 pair, which I haven't. So,
I mean, it really depends on what you're using the headphones for, right? Like, to be honest, the Hi-Fi Man HE400i, those are the headphones that I'm using at home right now, and they're really great for mixing because they're comfortable. Because to my ears, like they're inspiring to me because they sound the way I want them to. But they're really bad for tracking because they're an open ear design, right? So if I'm wearing these and I'm recording vocals, all the music that's being mixed into my headphones is also coming out of the back of the headphones right into the microphone. And let's just say that's probably pretty frowned upon when you're talking about recording music, because that adds extra noise. Sometimes you can do some really interesting things with that, but that adds extra noise. So they're probably not good for tracking. But my main point there is like use different headphones for different things. You might have a pair of really crappy headphones, but they seal really well and they make great tracking headphones because it doesn't need to sound amazing. You just have to be able to hear what you're singing over in that example, and make sure that sound doesn't leak back into the microphone. Use your great headphones for the mixing process or whatever, however you want to do it.
Well, also, as far as like the mixing process, it's also a good idea to listen to your stuff on crappy speakers or headphones to see how it will sound on those things.
It's like running your website in IE with the resolution turned way down.
Run it through the Real Player simulator.
Exactly.
I always have a Zune around just to,
that's right.
to hear what it would have sounded like 10 years ago. No, that's a great tip. Like you want to not only use different headphones for different things, but it sounds like you want to listen to your music back on different playback scenarios. It might be a good way of putting it.
Totally.
Absolutely. Throw it in the car, listen to it in the car, listen to it. I mean, we joke about listening to it through a laptop speaker, but so many people, that's how they listen to music. Yeah. It's a very casual listening experience, let's say. But if you as a musician kind of approximate and average out the ideas that you get from the educational listening experience of listening to it on your studio speakers, which are amazing, versus your stereo speakers in the living room, which are hyped on the low end, to your car stereo speakers, which you're very used to because you listen to it every day, to your laptop speakers, which are super crappy but reflect what a lot of people hear. If you actually use all those things, take notes, and then kind of approximate between them, you can end up with a pretty great sound. It's just sometimes takes a while.
Really quick story. I used to work at a studio that actually built a van room in the studio. Like it was a room shaped like a van with speakers like approximately like a van, so you could go in that room and listen to your mix.
That's awesome. Love it.
Was it an Econoline simulated? That's amazing.
I think it was like A-Team style.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, and it makes me wonder if you could make us an album that is designed to sound entirely different in a car than it is on a laptop than it is somewhere else.
That's a good thought. Yeah, I'm curious about that, like how that would, because every listening environment, every speaker that you listen to, they're all different. They all have different characteristics, so they're all going to pull something different out. Yeah. So even if you did that, that would work on the select few things that you tested it on. You never know what you get on the rest of them. And that's where the mastering process really comes into play, right? Like in a true mastering process, your music goes to a mastering engineer in a studio that is built, with sound dampening and diffraction and very accurate speakers and analysis hardware that can allow them to say, given what this music is, this is as true as this music can sound on the best possible speakers. And they understand their room so well that if they can get it within that range where they know instinctively this is going to sound good, it's probably going to translate pretty well to the majority of speakers that it ends up getting played on.
Yeah. Otherwise, you're in a Yanny Laurel situation.
Yes.
I don't know if that could
No
be
one needs
cool.
that.
Yeah, I don't know. Last thing before we move on from this topic, I know there's probably a lot of budding musicians out there who are eating up all of this recommendations for gear and recording situations. What do y'all have to say about the situation in which you record? Do you need to have a lot of baffling, put a sheet over your head? Like, how do you feel about that aspect of it?
I'll go first.
Sure.
My recording situation, the room that I recorded this last album on is in our new house, right? And we moved here, and then I think I started recording the tracks for Fever Dreamer here, over the last 3 years. The room that I use is so super not ideal. It's not an enclosed room. It's connected with this very big portal into the kitchen. It's this big, wide open space. I had a couple of, sound panels that I pulled from my old house into the new place, but no matter how I sliced it, like I could treat 3 of the walls, but the 4th wall just wasn't there, and it's hardwood floors, and so echoing through there. I mean, I think ultimately, as an independent musician, obviously you just work as best as you can to treat the sound given what you have. A lot of people will just take a comforter, a down comforter and hang it on the wall right behind the microphone so that there isn't a reflection of sound into the microphone. Or maybe, get under the desk and surround yourself with pillows and record down there. I mean, you can play around with it. Every weird situation that you do like that is going to have its own kind of sound fingerprint to it, but you do what you can. Like, my room is super echoey, but in some ways, like I have hardware and some wall treatment that gets me close enough. And I don't know if it's perfect, but it's close enough. There's a lot of ways that you can treat that stuff though. And you can do it very DIY if you want. You could build them yourself out of what is it? Insulation and a couple of boards. I mean, it's really not that difficult.
If you got a lot of bookshelves sometimes.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
A nice size closet will do it too in the right situation. That's what I did at a previous apartment. I had a sort of a walk through closet from one room to another, and I just took half of it and made it a vocal booth, like putting down what they call blankets, kind of on the side. It's kind of to deaden it a little bit. But now in my new place, I just kind of close mic myself, and I don't have any treatment at all. And I just realized I just rely on my mixing skills to get it the way I like, and I kind of like that sort of I usually add a ton of reverb anyway, so it works.
That's helping you already.
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, I mean, mics are getting good enough now that if you can afford something, even a Heil PR40 will cost you a few $100s, but it's not crazy. It's not thousands of dollars, and those will cut out a lot of the need to worry about that. Although, yeah, the old putting the quilts over your head in the closet. I mean, I know a lot of podcasters do that too. So.
Yep. Oh, the hook's coming out.
Let's get into our final discussion topic. This one was voted on by the patrons at the advisor level, and it is: how has technology changed your relationship with music over the last 10 years, both as a producer and as a consumer? And Dale, let's start with you. How has technology? We've been talking about all this gear. We've been talking about all these approaches and distribution channels, but how has that changed your relationship with music, if it has?
Well, I mean, I guess it's the way it's affected. I guess a lot of people, even yourself as well. I used to buy albums. I used to go to the store, buy albums, go online, Amazon, iTunes, buy an entire album. Now I am a member of Google's All Access streaming service. I haven't bought an album. Well, that's not true. I did buy an album the other day, but there was something that was super rare from the 70s that no one's heard of. So I couldn't get it anywhere else. But
don't you hate that? You're like, I haven't bought an album. Crap, I just bought one. Yeah.
But yeah, and so I come from, I'm surrounded by vinyl here, and I have I used to love artwork and all that stuff. And so it's not as important in releases these days now. I mean, people, have album covers, but it's not, it doesn't lend to the character of the project as much as it used to, I don't think. But on the other hand, it's made my listening, being able to listen to whatever I want, just so convenient, and I get in my car and I tell my phone what I want to listen to, and I'm off. It's
Yeah, that's something that Tom and I kind of talk about, because he likes to own his music. I mean, I know streaming works for you as well, but you have that feeling of like, no, that actually makes me feel better, where I'm like, I don't even want it. Where am I going to put it? So why do you think that some people still hold on to I want it to be a tangible thing that I can find locally on my, whatever device it is, rather than someone like me who's like, I'm leasing the music?
Well, for one reason, it still comes and goes, right? So like you get all these rights issues with artists and labels or whatever. Like that album that you were listening to yesterday isn't there today, or like half of the songs are missing. And this way you can buy it and upload it yourself, and you've got it.
Yeah, and there are a lot of situations where it's something that I don't trust will ever be on streaming. Maybe it's an oddity or some old like digitization of a 78 or something like that. So I like to have the mix. But I'll tell you what, Sarah, I am loosening up on that. And it's funny, as I've been preparing for the move. I'm moving into a new house in a little less than a month now. I've been going through my albums. I've been going through my CDs, and my criterion for keeping something has changed drastically just in the last 5 years since I moved last. Anything where I'm like, you know what, this record is always going to be available in streaming. The artwork isn't that great. I'm going to get rid of it. CDs is even easier. Like if I think I can find this digitally, I probably don't need that CD unless it's super rare. So I've gotten rid of almost all of the CDs I owned. And the records, I cut my record collection in half, because so much of it I was like, oh, but you know what? Like this album, this cover is in really crappy shape. It doesn't even look nice. And I can easily find this music. So the prevalence of popular music has meant that it's only the niche stuff, only the stuff that I'm not confident, the Temple Kazoo Orchestra. I want to have that album, right?
Don't we all?
Yeah. Well, I do. So,
another thing that I've found with streaming, and this is definitely as a consumer, because I don't produce music at all, is because I have access to, 10 new albums a week type thing, I tend to listen to stuff that I really like much less, because there's just so much of it. I could listen to an album front to back and be like, this was great. And I kind of forget about it because of the way that, a lot of the stuff is set up, where they want to, push new music towards you. As a music producer, creator, I would assume that would be really frustrating, or could be. Dale?
Oh, sorry.
It's so frustrating. Neither one of them can even form a word.
Well, yeah, I mean, and it kind of goes back to our earlier conversation about there just being, the market is flooded with a lot of people who want to make music. But I do find that it has changed my listening habits, even though I still like what I like. I don't listen to the same stuff over and over, because I almost feel like,
and that complicates the streaming payment model, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's my fault then, right? I mean, that if you're not listening to what I did, over and over, I didn't do a good job producing the song.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I think if I had your CD and I loved it and it was in my car, I'd listen to it over and over. Okay. I tend to do that.
But is that a lack of options? In other words, when you're in your car, you're like, well, I can only listen to the radio or the CDs I brought with me.
Exactly.
I think the mentality was way different back, in the 90s, when we had a single CD player in our car, and we're heading to our car because we got a 20-minute drive, and we grab that CD and bring it in there, and then it gets left in there for 5 days, and we forget to bring anything else. So, we just become experts on that album for 5 days. Like, that doesn't happen anymore. The unlimited choice that we have from streaming gives us the opposite problem, gives us the opposite challenge of, well, what do I even want to listen to? Like now, so much of my music listening is very passive. Like, it's not something that I sit down and listen to in a focused sense anymore. I'm just as happy nowadays to say, hey, Google, play music, and just listen to whatever it happens to give me, because, Google kind of analyzes what you listen to and it matches it with your voice. And then it says, well, here's a playlist we think you might like. And a lot of times, it sucks, but a lot of times it's fine and it's good enough. And I didn't have an idea of what I actually wanted to listen to anyways. So great, I'll go for that. So I just think the technology has allowed us to form different habits around how we enjoy music. We don't, and maybe I'm speaking only for myself, but we don't obsess about one particular thing. Even the most amazing album that comes out now, I will still concede that it's an amazing album, and I will still probably only listen to it a couple of times and then forget about it for a couple of months and then go back to it again. You know what I mean? It's just the way it is now.
Well, it's not just you, but like, I mean, my own personal experience, like there is a Little Brother album, Separate but Equal, Drama-Free Edition. I've had that, I've been listening to that nonstop in my car. I've got a ton of options, but I just love that album so much since I discovered it like a month ago. I still rock it all the time because it just sounds so great in my car.
That'll do it too, right? Like if you've got the perfect environment for that particular type of album, then that helps as well. It's like, you know what? It's a sunny day. I'm bumping this. This is perfect. Looking at to kind of address the question of you know, how our relationship changed with music 10 years ago to now. Like when I look at my music habits 10 years ago, like I was a collector. I was an owner of music. I loved going into music stores and sampling. At the time, I think I was DJing. So, you know, there was also that going in there and like grabbing a stack of records and sitting down at a turntable and dropping the needle on random points. Like that whole, like talking about it, I'm getting a little goosebumps because it was such a, I don't know, it was such an exploration, and you really never knew what you were going to come out of that experience with. It was a journey. It was a destination where you walk down the street into the store and you knew that you were going to spend the next hour like going down this rabbit hole. And hopefully at the other end, you were going to emerge with this very small but selective you know, sampling of music that you worked for, and now you're going to obsess over and until the next obsession comes along. Like I don't do that anymore. I miss it, but there is no amount of like unlimited catalog in a streaming service gives me that feeling. It's a very passive thing now. And I realize it's just what the technology allows us to do. On one hand, it's amazing that we have access to unlimited amounts of music. 20 years ago, me would have killed for this and actually dreamed about the day of having it. But there's a little bit of magic lost. Right. No, definitely don't look at the books.
No evidence. Yes. And he has not been convicted.
Don't look too deeply into that one. You know, I miss that. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. No, I get you. Because the exception that proves the rule for me most recently was Logic's Bobby Tarantino 2, where Justin Robert Young messaged me because they had a Rick and Morty track at the beginning of the album, or he did. And that made me go, well, let me investigate this album. And then I started listening to the album, and that was an old-fashioned feeling of a friend recommending an album, me listening to the album and liking it and playing it a few times and then adding it into my playlist. Most of the time, if I add something into my playlist, I read about the artist on like the BBC in one of their weekend music profiles, or I heard about it on a television show or even a commercial, and you're like, oh, who's that? And I look them up that way. Probably the biggest source of music for me is Eileen, my wife, playing stuff in the house and me going, oh, I like that one. But you know,
yeah,
I guess that's
Ariana Grande, for example.
Yeah, no tears left to cry. That girl. Thing. Well, you know what? I guess that's going to bring us to an end. So thank you all for being with us.
Thanks,
guys.
Yeah,
this was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it.
Thanks for thinking of me.
Yeah.
Let's talk about where folks can keep up with all your music and other work. Jason, we'll start with you.
Well,
what you got going on these days?
If you want to find my music, just go to my site. It's yellowgoldmusic.com. You'll find, you know, there's a little music tab there with 3 albums that I've released in any sort of a public sense. And then Fever Dreamers, kind of the album that released earlier this year. And I don't know, you can follow me on Twitter, twitter.com/Jason Howell or @JasonHowell. I don't know why I decided to give you the full URL. You already know that. And then, of course, I do tech podcasts for Twit. twit.tv. I'm there talking technology pretty much every day of the week.
Awesome.
Thank you, guys.
Yes, of course. It was so great to see you again.
Yeah, great to see you too.
Dale Chase, what's been going on with you, and how can people keep up with all your fine work?
Yeah, I've just been working on some new music. I'm finally getting back into writing some things that I really like. You can catch all my stuff on dchase.bandcamp.com. Like Type Def, Love Plus Plus, and my super political hit, Where's the Bottom? And you can also catch me on Twitter @Dale O Chase.
Excellent. Folks, if you'd like more of these roundtable shows, if you like the feel of us just letting loose and chatting like this, join in on the fun or up your pledge and get some of our cool perks like Good Day Internet, exclusive columns, and more at patreon.com/DTNS.
If you want to send us feedback, we would love it. Our email address is feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. We're also live Monday through Friday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern. That's 2030 UTC. Find out more at dailytechnewsshow.com/live.
Back tomorrow with Justin Robert Young. Talk to you then.
This show is part of the Frog Pants Network. Get more at frogpants.com.
Diamond Club hopes you
have enjoyed this program.
That was the best Diamond Club tag ever. It just wouldn't play. I kept hitting it. I'm like, come on.
I'm like, I can do it. Heard it. Oh, I don't know, hundreds of times now. No, sorry, I cut out a couple times, guys. My Logitech, I use this Logitech gaming software, and it wasn't the camera, but it was my software kept just like it was not playing nice with Hangouts. So hopefully I didn't miss anything great.
It was gracefully done, Sarah.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Good show, guys. Good show.
Yeah, thank you. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, this was awesome.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
What do you think of the great gig in the cloud?
Sounds so fatal.
Does kind of, but I like it, Kyle.
Where did that reference originate? Gig in the Sky.
Gig in the Sky, isn't that that might be why am I suddenly blanking? The band, Grateful Dead. Isn't that Grateful Dead?
Oh, is it?
It's or Pink Floyd. It's Grateful Dead or Pink Floyd.
Oh.
Gig in the Sky. Let's Pink Floyd. Pink Floyd. Great Gig in the Sky.
It itself is a song lyric.
By the way, which one's pink? Also Pink Floyd. Great Gig in the Cloud then? Sure.
Sure.
Yeah, I like that.
All right.
Love it.
Love it.
Print it. Copy.
Cool.
Well, yeah, I know Roger probably told you this already, but we just kind of sit around and chill on the stream while we publish after the show. So come and go as you please. If you want to hang around, you're more than welcome to. If you need to get going, that's great. No problem. It's very casual.
I would love
Yeah.
to hang out. Unfortunately, I have to go pick up my kids from school.
Unfortunately.
Oh, kids, they'll be fine.
Sadly, I'm a dad.
You know, I would just make them walk home, but they're 5 and 8, and that wouldn't be
Somebody
very
will
good.
take them.
Yeah, I was
I gotta go right now.
All right. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you guys. This was so much fun. I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
Joe.
yeah. Thanks for being
Thanks for being on.
Thanks,
Yeah, good to
Jason.
see you, man.
So good to see you.
Great to see you guys. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Bye.
I hope his kids are fine.
Yeah, just ask a nice stranger to give you a ride.
Small town.
Fine.
It'll be good.
Who is the most Dale? Who's the most famous person you've ever met because of your music? Like, oh my God, this is like
Because of my music?
like some relation. Like you were at an event because of your music. Like
Roger Chang.
I'm just kidding.
I don't think I've met anyone because of my music. I mean, as I was like coming up and working in studios and that sort of thing, I met some famous people. Like I actually smoked a blunt with Busta Rhymes once.
Oh,
Nice.
That would be fun. That's yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't remember the conversation really. I mean, his stuff is really good.
Of course, kids, he's talking about tobacco.
Oh, I didn't realize we were still on the air.
Yeah.
Sorry. No, don't.
It's legal in California now, so
Only at a
yeah.
certain age, though.
Sorry,
True.
I totally didn't realize we were still on the air. No, otherwise, no, I don't think I'm trying to remember. I don't think I've really met anyone famous because of my music. Like actually, like my recordings, like all just like through like all my like engineering work is where I've met people.
Yeah. Interesting.
Like,
I mean, the Busta Rhymes story is a pretty good one.
Well, the one that blew my mind the most, though, you're probably not familiar. You might not be familiar with it, but this engineer Bob Power, who worked on a lot of the like early Tribe Called Quest stuff. Who else? Michelle Indigo-Cello, of the Roots, their first few albums. And so like I knew who he was at this point in time, and I was like just like a general assistant in the studio, like stocking the tape closet when we still had tape. That's how long ago this was.
Yeah.
And I catch him coming out of the room. He's like going to the bathroom or something, and or maybe he was coming back from the bathroom, and I because I could hear what they were doing through the closet. He was working with Michelle Indigo-Cello, and I could hear. I was like, "Oh, wow, what you guys are doing?" I said something along the lines of like, what she was working on just sounded amazing. And he said that, yeah, it kind of reminds me of that Miles Davis album, not Live Evil, the other one. And I'm like, oh, Bitches Brew. And he's like, yeah. And then we started talking about like Miles Davis, and I'm like, I can't believe I'm having a conversation about Miles Davis about power right now.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
The modern day version of that story, what starts with, I was cleaning out the company Dropbox on my laptop, and he walked by to get a tea. I don't know how that works now. There's no tape closet. That's amazing though. It makes you like, I would think if I were in your shoes, like, is he trying to trick me about my knowledge? Like, how does he not remember? But then like, I've been on the other end of that conversation where it's like, yeah, this guy thinks I'm an idiot because, I can't remember the name of this tech product or whatever in my case. Because, sometimes your brain just fails you.
Yeah.
By the way, I kept all my Miles Davis records when I went through and got rid of half my album. I'm a huge fan.
Good man.
I kept almost all my jazz. I don't think I got rid of any jazz unless it was just in real bad shape. I got rid of a lot of my vocalist stuff, like Sinatra and things. I kept some of it, but
I used to have a Sinatra 78 around, but that was in pretty bad shape.
I have a 78. I have a few 78s. I have a Bing Crosby 78 too.
Nice.
I even have over here on the shelf, I have an Edison flat, not a cylinder.
Let me go to my magical bookcase. It's like,
oh yeah, here it is.
One of these days I'll pull out a copy of the Magna Carta.
It's an Edison record. Look how thick that thing is.
Wow.
It's not a cylinder.
Yeah. That's amazing.
I don't remember. It's classical. It's Bach String Quartet Air.
Wow.
And then Trameri from Schumann on the back.
That's awesome.
That's great audio.
That's awesome.
I keep that wedged in between a couple of books over there so that it doesn't get cracked.
Actually, what am I talking about? I met what's his name?
Miles Davis, Bitches Brew.
Whitey Cracker. I performed with him at a gig at Yahoo several years ago.
Oh, wow.
Years ago, yeah. And he's a celebrity in my book for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I think I've seen him in the East Bay once or something. Who's the most famous person you met, Roger?
Through my music, no one.
Music. Really? That's too bad.
But in terms of like just career work, so I did all those like celebrity house calls. So it was like Ed McMahon, Sheila E. What's her name? She was in 9 to 5.
Dolly Parton, Lily Tomlin.
I've met when I was doing that bit for IOC. I met this guy from Black Flag,
Henry Rollins.
Henry Rollins. I met him. He was pretty cool. He was actually a really nice guy. And I had him sign something for Patrick because I know Patrick is like a big fan.
Yeah.
And then
Patrick Norton?
Oh yeah.
Patrick Norton? Likes Black Flag? That doesn't make sense.
Never. I know. It's totally out of character for him. Then I met Felicia Day through Tom and Veronica. I've met LeVar Burton through Veronica, and then Garrett Wang through Veronica, and Veronica knows a lot of them. I think they're all Star Trek people. And
That's the conference circuit beat.
I remember the Garrett Wang. Was I there? Was that?
Remember I stopped you? It's like, oh,
yeah.
sorry, I didn't mean to stop you so hard. I was like, no, you can't walk by. You're gonna be excited.
That was a good time.
And then I met. I didn't solely meet, but I got stared at with very glowering eyes by. Man, I wish I'm really bad with names when you put me on the spot. Hot Tub Time Machine, Rob Corddry.
You got stared at by Rob Corddry, so you didn't meet him.
No.
Okay.
I almost ran into the guy from Castle, Nathan Fillion. Like I was walking on the streets. And
this is starting to sound like me when I talk about the famous people who've stepped on my feet that I've never met.
I had a Fat Joe give me a dirty look.
Wait, who?
Gave you a dirty look?
Fat Joe, yeah.
Oh, wow. Oh, I literally physically ran into what's that? Ron Jeremy. He was
not even gonna just move on. I physically ran into Ron Jeremy is all you need to say. That story just told itself.
And it forever will be remembered by the internet. But I don't know. Do you find your music a really good social outreach for you in general? Like, because you play gigs or because you're going to events, you're meeting people or like you would have not otherwise met.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Also through like my collaborating, which I forgot to touch on. That was how I connected with Dual Core, and you remember those guys.
Oh, yeah.
I was working on my first album, and I knew them through their relationship with Hack 5, but I didn't actually I knew of them, but didn't really know them. But I had completed half a song, and was like, oh, you know who like 80 would sound great on this. And I just sent him like half the song, like, hey, you want to get down on this? And he was with it, and he rocked it. And then met him for the first time at a show that we booked together in New York, and like met him for the first time that night. Performed the song together with him, and like just killed it.
That's amazing.
And we were like fast friends ever since.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, folks, we're gonna wrap up the video here. What were you gonna say, Amos?
I was just gonna say that we had an 80 on our podcast, and he basically his whole social channel is Reddit, going through and finding new groups and spreading his like all the music and everything else. He loves the Reddit.
Nice.
Loves the Reddit.
I mean, Reddit's got a little of everything for everyone. If you can think of it, there's a subreddit.
All right. Like I said, wrapping up the video. Thanks everybody for watching. Audio people, stick around. We're still gonna have more to come.